Disney has just renewed The Simpsons for another 4 seasons, taking it to season 40. And for a show that has literally been on air longer than many of us have even been alive, it would be pretty naive to think that it hasn't been without its controversies, situations its creators would rather stay buried. But where's the fun in that? As a huge Simpsons fan, I see these as a part of Simpsons history. So today we're diving into the show's biggest controversies from the early days to the very recent drama. Now, these aren't in any particular order, but let's start with one of its oldest gags: Homer strangling Bart. When The Simpsons first started airing as shorts back in 1987, a lot of things were different back then, especially when it came to parenting and discipline. I mean, corporal punishment had just been banned in UK schools a year earlier, and in the US, some schools still allow it today. And at home, it was even more common, and still is in many places. But because physical punishment was so normalised back then, Homer strangling Bart didn't really raise any eyebrows.
You did this to me! Ah!
And to top it off, it was massively exaggerated. It was never supposed to be taken seriously. But as the seasons rolled by, many pointed to the strangling gag as a sign that the show was getting outdated.
God!
You strangle your child?
Yeah, but he's cool with it.
But it wasn't until season 35's McMansion and Wife that the writers finally addressed it. In the episode, Homer and Marge meet their new neighbours, and when Homer gets complimented on his firm handshake, he says this:
See, Marge? Strangling the boy has paid off. Just kidding, I don't do that anymore. Times have changed.
It seemed like this little meta joke was the show's way of putting one of its most infamous gags to bed. Maybe they realised times had changed and the joke simply didn't land the way it used to. But as a result of this, thousands took to social media to voice their opinions on the change, with many news sites also jumping on it too. But as it turns out, the whole thing was just supposed to be a joke, nothing more. So to set the record straight, The Simpsons came out with this tweet with a drawing of Homer strangling Bart with the caption reading, "Why you little clickbaiting?" A year later, showrunner Matt Selman told TMZ that it was a mistake to ever suggest the strangulation joke would end, and he regretted the quip as it felt more like an announcement, but it was just a joke and people took it in the wrong direction. He continued by saying that the recurring strangulation joke is in the DNA of the series, and fans can expect to see it happen again, when the moment can be funny or impactful. So with that, they brought the gag back in season 36's Bart's birthday, but considering the plot was about the story being generated by AI, it kinda makes sense that the system would recycle a long-running Simpsons joke like this, instead of coming up with something new. It felt like meta-commentary from the writers poking fun at AI and its inability to keep up with the times. And side note, this episode is one of the best from the most recent season, and it is one I'd really recommend you guys watching it if you haven't already. So anyway, let's move on to pissing off Australia. The Aussies are renowned for being very laid back, so you've got to do something really bad to piss them off, and The Simpsons did just that. When season 6's Bart vs Australia first aired in 1995, many Australians criticised it as being a mockery of their country.
You're all the way in Australia. Hey, I think I hear a dingo eating your baby.
Yeah, well, ooh!
The staff received hundreds of letters from angry Aussies, and producer Mike Rice even claimed that the episode was condemned by the country's parliament.
This episode is purposely very nasty toward Australia, and very inaccurate. So it's this great combination of nastiness and inaccuracies. Lots and lots of things are just completely made up for fun, and to bring the worst that we possibly could to it.
That's not to say that every Australian hated it, but the general consensus seemed to be that it was disrespectful to their culture. But since then, the reception of the episode has vastly improved, with some Australian Simpsons fans organising a petition to actually rename the Australian dollar to dollary doos.
$900 dues!
But at least they didn't ban the episode, unlike the next country I'm going to talk about: disrespecting Japan. With over 785 episodes of The Simpsons produced, it's no surprise that some have been banned, with the most common reason being for offensive cultural stereotypes. And that was certainly the case with season 10's 30 Minutes Over Tokyo. Yeah, the episode was so controversial that it was actually banned in Japan for its offensive content, including a scene about their Hello Kitty factory where they implied their products were made from actually burning cats, as well as a reference to a Pokemon episode that caused seizures. And to top it all off, Homer threw the Emperor of Japan into a box full of dirty sumo thongs.
All hail Emperor Columbus Doris!
This episode never aired in Japan and isn't available on Disney Plus Japan either. It was also initially banned in South Korea due to its history with Japan, though it did eventually get to air there in 2007. But that wouldn't be the last episode to be banned in Japan. In season 11's Little Big Mom, Lisa takes revenge on Bart and Homer by painting them with green oatmeal and convincing them that they had leprosy.
Leprosy!
Ah!
Unclean!
Unclean!
But the prank ultimately got the episode banned in Japan. This is because of Japan's history with leprosy and how it was marked by stigma and isolation, with individuals being diagnosed with the disease and being forcibly quarantined in colonies from the late 19th century. And then the government enacted the Leprosy Prevention Law in 1907, which led to widespread discrimination and harsh treatment of those affected, even after a cure was discovered.
We're not really set up for lepers.
So you're shunning us.
And the law was only repealed in 1996, and since then Japan has worked to address the historical wrongs and the enduring social stigma surrounding the disease. Hence why they were probably still quite sensitive to the disease being treated as a joke in the episode.
Here you go, lad.
Dad, no!
Brazil. So only 3 years after throwing the Japanese emperor into a pile of thongs, the Simpsons managed to piss off another country. In Blame It on Lisa, the Simpsons visit Brazil, and Rio is portrayed as a poor, crime-filled city complete with monkeys and rat-infested slums.
Ooh, they look like Skittles.
But unfortunately, this came right after Brazil had invested $18 million into their tourism campaign, and so, yeah, they weren't too happy. The government was so upset that they actually tried to sue Fox, and in response, James L. Brooks gave a very sarcastic apology, suggesting that Homer fights Brazil's president on celebrity boxing, all while Fox completely denied any responsibility. And as a result, the episode was banned in Brazil up until 2012, when it was finally released on DVD.
Mom, these are slums. The government just painted them bright colors so the tourists wouldn't be offended. Works for me.
And in typical Simpsons fashion, the writers went even further in the Regina monologues, with Homer saying this.
Well, I'd like to return to Brazil, but I hear the monkey problem is even worse now.
And then they really took things further in The Wife Aquatic, when Lisa called it the most disgusting place she'd ever visited.
This is the most disgusting place we've ever gone. What about Brazil? After Brazil.
China outrage. But Brazil is hardly the last country they pissed off, because The Simpsons pulled absolutely no punches in their depiction of Chinese culture in season 16's Goo Goo Gai Pan. Here Homer literally strangles a panda cub, which is the one animal that's synonymous with China.
Why, you little... I'll endanger you!
As well as the Chinese government taking exception to a scene where Homer visits the tomb of Chairman Mao. There was also several jabs at Chinese censorship in this episode, which is very ironic, seeing as this 1989 Tiananmen Square joke resulted in this episode being banned in China. Even now, it's still not available on Disney Plus in Hong Kong. The Tracy Alman lawsuit. As we all know, there would be no Simpsons without The Tracy Ullman Show, which is where the original shorts first aired. And in 1991, Tracy Ullman sued Fox, claiming that she was owed millions in merchandising profits. Apparently her contract stated that she was to receive 7.5% of adjusted gross profits relating to merchandise, with her share being estimated to be worth over $2.5 million. However, the court ultimately sided with Fox because the characters were created by Matt Groening and Alman wasn't creatively involved.
I'm not bitter, you know, that Bart Simpson makes more money than me. What can he buy? He's a cartoon, isn't he?
Banksys Couch Gag. In October 2010, The Simpsons aired one of its darkest couch gags ever, directed by the street artist Banksy. Known for his political commentary, he depicted a grim sweatshop in the opening of the episode Money Bart, showing child labour, animal cruelty, and inhumane working conditions behind the production of The Simpsons. It was a jab at commercialism, mass production, and the real-world cost behind the stuff we consume without thinking. But while it got people talking, it also caused real backlash, particularly from the people who actually make The Simpsons. Nelson Shin and the South Korean animators at ACOM who had worked on the show for years were offended by how their work was portrayed. He said most of the content was about degrading people from Korea, China, Mexico, and Vietnam. If Banksy wants to criticize these things, I suggest that he learn more about it first. Gun violence. Season 9's The Cartridge Family saw Homer purchasing a handgun to protect his family after they go to a soccer match that turns into a riot. But Homer's a bit haphazard with it, casually carrying it around everywhere and even fires it to retrieve items from the roof.
You want me to get the cat down?
No thanks.
And it was because of the soccer riot and the depiction of guns in a comical or positive light that got this episode banned in the UK. This is because British censors believed that it could encourage others to commit gun violence.
You use your gun as a can opener?
I use it for everything. Watch me turn on the TV.
Even still though, this episode was included in the UK VHS video, The Simpsons Too Hot for TV, and then it did eventually get to air in the UK on Channel Sky, but the ending was edited to show Marge throwing the gun away, removing the part where she hesitates because she thinks it makes her look cool. Michael Jackson. In Season 3's Stark Raving Dad, Homer ends up in a mental institution and meets Leon Kompowski, a man who thinks he's Michael Jackson.
What'd you say your name was?
Michael Jackson.
Doesn't ring a bell.
And Jackson did actually get to voice the character, but was credited as John J. Smith. But after the 2019 release of Leaving Neverland, which uncovered allegations against Jackson, the episode was pulled from syndication and Disney Plus worldwide, therefore making it the only episode missing from the Simpsons collection on Disney Plus. And in support of this, producer Al Jean said it looks like the episode was used by Michael Jackson for something other than what we'd intended to. It wasn't just a comedy to him, it was something that was used as a tool, and I strongly believe that. It's why removing it is appropriate. 9/11. The city of New York vs. Homer Simpson sees the family travelling to Manhattan to retrieve their car after Barney abandoned it. And this episode was removed from syndication after the 9/11 attacks due to the prominence of the World Trade Center in the plot. And then when it was brought back in 2006, some parts were edited out, with some airings cutting all scenes of Homer near the towers, like the whole bathroom scene as well as this line.
Sorry about that, guy. They stick all the jerks in Tower 1.
Francophobia. The term cheese-eating surrender monkeys, sometimes shortened to surrender monkeys, is a pejorative term for French people, but weirdly it was first coined by Ken Keeler, who is a writer for The Simpsons, and in a 2012 interview he stated that it's perhaps his best contribution to the show. In 1995's Round Springfield, budget cuts at Springfield Elementary forced groundskeeper Willie to teach French, and he starts his class with this line.
Bonjour, you cheese-eating surrender monkeys!
But the term quickly became common amongst right-wing political groups to criticise France, like Jonah Goldberg, who used it for his article in the National Review magazine. This was to criticise France's refusal for not joining the US in invading and occupying Iraq. And later on, Nigel Farage used the phrase in a debate with Tony Blair, amongst many other cases. Simpsons showrunner Al Jean commented that the staff didn't expect the term to become so widely used and never intended it as any kind of genuine political statement.
It certainly shocked me that this was something the Bush administration was using as their, rallying cry. No, and I remember at the time, nobody said, that's such a memorable line, that will live in infamy.
It's many lawsuits. So we've already covered the Tracy Alman lawsuit, but that was far from the last time that The Simpsons found themselves in legal hot water. So let's run through some more. Actor Frank Severo, best known for his role in Goodfellas, sued The Simpsons for $250 million, claiming that the character Louie was a blatant copy of him. He argued that the show used his likeness without permission, but the court didn't agree, and so the case was dismissed. Then there was the video game Simpsons Road Rage, which, let's be honest, was a blatant ripoff of Crazy Taxi.
Hey, it's time to make some crazy money. Are you ready? Here we go!
And Sega thought so as well, so they sued Fox Interactive for patent infringement, but ultimately the case never went to trial and was privately settled. And more recently, longtime composer Alf Clausen was fired in 2019, and Clausen alleged that his firing was age and disability discrimination, citing his Parkinson's diagnosis as a factor. And so he filed a lawsuit, but then dropped it in 2022. George Bush. So the beef first started not with George Bush Sr., but with his wife Barbara, because on September 28, 1990, the First Lady of the United States famously criticised the show in People magazine, calling it the dumbest thing she had ever seen. So The Simpsons writers responded to Mrs. Bush with a letter from Marge.
Ma'am, if we're the dumbest thing you ever saw, Washington must be a good deal different than what they teach me at the current events group at the church.
While also suggesting that her and Mrs. Bush weren't so different, both serving exceptional men, and her hope for a resolution. And in response, Mrs. Bush apologised, even admitting that the Simpsons family were in fact a good example of American households. But the peace didn't last very long, because in 1992, the President of the United States famously criticised the show by saying that he wanted families more like the Waltons and a lot less like the Simpsons. And again, the Simpsons didn't let that insult go unanswered.
Hey, we're just like the Waltons. We're praying for an end to the Depression too.
Which I guess is why later on in the episode, Two Bad Neighbours, they went a little easier on Barbara than they did with Bush.
It's a shame it didn't work out, Marge, but George just felt this neighborhood brought out the worst in him and...
I covered this whole debacle as well as the banning of the Bart Simpson t-shirts in this video right here. So if you're interested in a big deep dive all about it, I've linked it down below. Homer gets high. In season 13's Weekend at Burnsy's, Homer gets prescribed marijuana to help with his pain after getting attacked by a bunch of crows. But soon the weed changes his personality and he somehow ends up getting a giant promotion at work, becoming executive vice president at the Springfield nuclear power plant. And even though the episode did get to air in the US as planned, the network was still super nervous about the potential backlash, so they decided to never actually show Homer smoking the marijuana. And in the UK, the episode was not allowed to air until after Watershed, i.e. after 9 PM, when all the kids had gone to bed. In fact, I don't ever remember this episode even airing on TV growing up, so I guess I was one of them. The Disney Plus aspect ratio. When the Simpsons episodes were first uploaded to Disney Plus, they were shown in the 16:9 widescreen format, which caused a huge stir amongst fans. This is because the show was created originally in a 4:3 aspect ratio, and zooming in and cropping it to fit the wider 16:9 screen cut off parts of the animation, including visual gags like the Seymour Butts balloon and this scene right here that cropped that all the beers were coming out of the same pipe. This led to backlash from viewers who felt that the changes were ruining the jokes as well as the integrity of the show's original visual style, and so Disney Plus eventually responded by offering a 4:3 viewing option, allowing fans to watch the episodes in their original format. And that got me thinking and very curious, if you watch The Simpsons on Disney Plus, do you watch it in the 4:3 format or full screen? Let me know in the comments. Apoo is removed. In the 2017 documentary The Problem with Apoo, it highlighted how the character was created by white writers, voiced by a white actor, and reinforced harmful South Asian stereotypes. And so The Simpsons tried to address it in a 2018 episode, but it just made things worse. Because in one scene, Marge reads an edited version of The Princess in the Garden to Lisa, who turns to the camera and says this.
Something that started decades ago and was applauded and inoffensive is now politically incorrect. What can you do?
This was then followed by Marge again, saying this.
Some things will be dealt with at a later date. If at all.
Making it clear that the producers weren't in any rush to fix it. Many criticised the episode for sidestepping the issue and shrugging off the controversy, and in response to this backlash, Al Jean tweeted this. I truly appreciate all responses pro and con. We'll continue to find an answer that is popular and more important right. Flash forward to 2020 and Hank Azaria confirmed that he was stepping away from voicing the character. And so The Simpsons season 29 episode The Surfsons marks as Apoo's last ever voiced appearance.
Take a peasant, leave a peasant.
Although he did appear as a background character in later outings, in recent seasons The Simpsons have stopped including Apoo even in the crowd scenes, so the odds of his return don't seem too promising, which was more or less confirmed by Azaria during his interview with Kondabolu in May 2023.
Through my role in Apoo and what I created in the Hollywood messaging, I helped to create a pretty marginalizing, dehumanizing stereotype.
And while it is possible that Apoo could be voiced by a new actor upon his eventual return, even this seems unlikely now that the voice actor has conceded that the character itself is a reinforced negative stereotype. And Apoo may have been a beloved character with many memorable moments, like his citizenship story, but his stereotypical portrayal does make his return a very sensitive topic. But what do you think? Speaking of which, let's now talk about voice actor changes. In the wake of the Black Lives Matter protests in 2020, the producers released this statement. Moving forward, The Simpsons will no longer have white actors voice non-white characters. This sparked debate across social media, with many applauding the decision, saying that it opened up more opportunities for people of colour, while you also had those that criticised it. And one such person who was against it was Harry Shearer himself, who said, "Folks say the show has become woke in recent years, and one of my characters has been affected. I voiced the black physician Dr. Hibbert, who I based on Bill Cosby. Back then, he was known as the whitest black man on television. Then a couple of years ago, I received an email saying that they'd employ a black actor who then copied my voice. The result is a black man imitating a white man imitating the whitest black man on TV." And then you had Matt Groening, who said, "Times change, but I actually didn't have a problem with the way we were doing it. All of our actors played dozens of characters each. It was never designed to exclude anyone." The Simpsons jumped the shark. Season 9's The Principal and the Pauper is widely regarded as one of the most controversial episodes, with many viewing it as the beginning of the show's declining quality. In the episode, the real Seymour Skinner returns to Springfield, revealing that Principal Skinner, whose real name is Alman Tamzarian, is an imposter who stole his identity.
My real name is Armin Tamzarian.
So Tamzarian leaves Springfield to live in the slums of Capital City, while Skinner takes on his role in the community. But the town soon gets sick and tired of him, and so they bring back Tamzarian and send the real Skinner away.
And I further decree that everything will be just like it was before all this happened, and no one will ever mention it again.
Fans and critics generally hated the twist when Principal Skinner was revealed to be an imposter, with many seeing it as the moment where The Simpsons jumped the shark. Some fans even pretend that the episode never even happened. This shock of changing long-established characters led to intense backlash, and showrunner Bill Oakley calls it one of the most controversial episodes of his tenure. And in the book Planet Simpson, Chris Turner criticizes the episode as the turning point marking the end of the show's golden age, calling it one of the weakest in the entire series.
Now let us welcome our new Principal Skinner, Principal Seymour Skinner. Him.
Even the cast disagreed with this episode, with Harry Shearer, aka Skinner's voice, calling it disrespectful to fans and a poor decision. Matt Groening too called it a mistake, labelling it as one of his least favourite episodes. However, the episode's writers and showrunners Ken Keeler, Bill Oakley and Josh Weinstein defended it, with Keeler claiming that he's proud of the episode, seeing it as a commentary on people who resist change. Oakley and Weinstein then explained that they intended it to be an experiment to push the show's boundaries and encourage fans to view it as non-canonical. Killing off Maude. Now, I know I've spoken about this story a lot, but I can't not talk about it because it remains to be one of the show's biggest controversies. In Alone Again, Naturally Diddly, Maude was knocked off the stands after returning with some snacks for the car rally, thus marking a huge moment in Simpsons history, a recurring and arguably prominent character being killed off for good. The decision came about after a pay dispute between her voice actress Maggie Roswell and the network, with Roswell wanting a pay rise to cover her travel expenses because she was flying to and back from Denver, but the greedy Fox executives only offered her $150, so she decided to leave. However, the writers of the show contradicted this, because in the DVD commentary for this episode, they said that they killed her off to give Ned new and fresh storylines, and honestly, I see it as a mix of both. And in risk of repeating myself, watch my recent Ned Flanders Love Live video for a full breakdown of that. Jumping the shark again, but this time, Homer's in space. The episode Deep Space Homer was written by David Merkin, the show's executive producer at the time, and it's his only writing credit for The Simpsons. Merkin had been working on the episode's concept for years, inspired by NASA's plan to send ordinary people into space to generate public interest. However, there was some debate amongst the writing staff during production, with some feeling that sending Homer to space was too grand of an idea. Matt Groening thought it was so over the top that it left the writers with nowhere to go. And so, as a result, they made several adjustments to make the story work, like they dialed back some of the sillier gags, like the idea that everyone in NASA was as clueless as Homer, and instead shifted the focus to the family dynamic and Homer's personal journey to become a hero. The Simpsons vs. New Orleans. The episode of Streetcar Named Marge faced controversy from New Orleans, Louisiana due to a song which didn't make the city sound very good. It spoke about how it was home to pirates, drunks, whores and tacky overpriced souvenir shops, and if you wanted to go to hell you should just take a trip to the Sodom or Gomorrah on the Mississippi.
Stinking, rotten, vomited, vile New Orleans.
It also said that the city was stinky, rotten, vomity, vile, putrid, brackish, maggoty, foul, crummy, lousy, rancid, and rank. So yeah, I can see why they would be offended. And so, the writers apologised, and in the next episode opening, Bart repeatedly writes, "I will not defame New Orleans." The UK then faced controversy after Channel 4 reran this episode around the time that New Orleans was devastated by Hurricane Katrina in 2005. And so those are the most notorious controversies surrounding The Simpsons. Were there any that you think were a major overreaction? If so, let me know in the comments. Thank you so much for watching, and thank you to my amazing Flying Hellfish patrons. And I guess I'll smell you later.